Hi, my name's Charlotte. I use they, them pronouns. Uh, I'm not really sure what to say in introductions. I'm really bad at that, but I'm care experienced. I went mad when I was a youngin'. I'm happy if you want to take photos, that's fine. But yeah, so I was here to talk about what I would like CAMS to understand and hopefully change. It's a huge, big topic. I could only scratch the tiniest surface, but here we go. So I was very young when I started experiencing mental health problems. I was described as an anxious child and a bit irrational, a bit weird. I had odd rituals. I was diagnosed with autism when I was 7, and that was thought to be the end of it. It wasn't. When I was 10, I started to think that there was maybe a bit more going on. I was watching BBC Breakfast. I was watching that today as well. Great. And there was a woman that was talking about having seasonal affective disorder. And I was 10 years old watching this. I didn't really understand, but I did understand what she was saying, and it resonated very much with me. But I didn't tell anyone. I was a bit afraid and ashamed to say, so I kept it to myself. When I was 12, a family member started to show some concerns. They'd noticed that I'd been self-harming and had took me to a doctor. It was another 2 years after that when I finally started seeing CAMS when I was 14. Had 3 referrals rejected because, according to the doctor that rejected them, some distress is normal for autistic adolescents. So when I think about my CAMS experiences and what I would like people to understand, I think the big one is often children and young people are very frightened when we enter services. I was absolutely terrified. I'd spent 4 years at this point trying to hide my problems from the world, and now I was supposed to tell people about them. I was worried that my psychiatrist would think that I was being silly, or that she had other people who were worse off that she would care about more, and that my problems weren't important. I think in part I developed this line of thinking from going so long without being helped. It was a way that I'd managed to cope with the fact that no one was helping me by internalising the idea that my problems weren't serious, they weren't important. I was worried that my psychiatrist would tell people. I took this to extremes. Most people that I've spoken to were worried they would tell their parents. I was worried that she would use me as gossip with her friends and family, but I thought that if she did see my problems as trivial like I thought, she would go to her family and people that she knew, and she would tell them about this ridiculous child that they were talking to that was scared of everything. Not telling people was a way that I could control who knew what was going on for me. When I first started seeing CAMS, in my first appointment, there was a nurse that I spoke to. And she was nice. I opened up to her for the first time. She promised me that she wouldn't tell anyone. And then she wrote a letter home to my mum, detailing every single thing that I had said. I was livid, I was mortified, I was embarrassed. And it took me a long time to recover from that and try to trust people again. And then I was afraid that I would be locked up in a hospital. If my psychiatrist didn't think my problems were trivial, would she think that I was mad? I am mad, but that's besides the point. My gran was diagnosed with schizophrenia and was sectioned for 7 years. So for a long time, that was my reference point for mental health. I visited her from the ages of 3 regularly, and I just remember visiting her and seeing how sad she looked and what this environment was like. When I admitted my fears to my psychiatrist, she said, "Well, I don't think you're schizophrenic. but she couldn't assure me that I wouldn't be sectioned. This didn't really help. And then the final point of what I was afraid of, other than everything, was what was going on inside my mind. I had went from studying for exams and getting straight A's in school, from being afraid to go out, worried that I would be killed by Alex Salmond, and I don't know, it was a really frightening time, but no one seemed to appreciate that. They saw this kind of thing every single day, so the individual got a bit lost in that. There was a detached attitude from the psychiatrist. She said that I was maybe just a little bit anxious, which, yeah, I was, because I couldn't go out without fearing that I would be killed. She just invalidated me. Every single time I went and came back from my appointment, I felt a bit more disillusioned. Even when my symptoms had stopped, when I'd stopped hearing voices and seeing things, I was still depressed, and I would still come home from my appointments feeling worse. And at that point, I was ready to disengage from services because I didn't think that I was going to get better. If this was the service that I was offered, I couldn't recover from that. I met a psychologist towards the end of my time in CAMHS who was wonderful. She was lovely. And when I think about what I would like CAMHS to change, I think mostly about my psychologist who listened to me and respected me. It feels like a really simple thing, but she never shoehorned me into an explanation, never tried to diagnose me or put me into a little box where before I'd been told that I was either stressed or it was because of my autism, which I didn't believe. She was respectful. She didn't pathologise me, but she also didn't treat me like a young child. She spoke to me like a 17-year-old that I was. And she believed in me. She believed that I could get better. Even when I was shouting at her and swearing at her and refusing to engage with her and I was being really difficult, she was hopeful. And for the first time, so was I, because this was the first person who had shown any sort of belief in me. She was the first person who told me that maybe things could change. And they did. And I don't think I would be here if it weren't for that belief that she helped to instill in me. So, what would I like CAMHS to change? It's hard to say. I want to keep it realistic because the government aren't great. They don't really give us money. There's stuff like waiting times, targets, out of area admissions, that we can't change in a day. I would like to talk about things that maybe people can go home and change, they can try. Stuff like attitudes, respecting us, believing in us, embracing differences, not pathologizing them, not shoehorning children and young people into what you believe they should or shouldn't be. Being flexible, engaging without preconceptions. Perhaps if it weren't for the preconceived notion that as an autistic person I would just struggle for the rest of my life, I would have got the help that I needed when I needed it. Maybe I'd be a bit less mad today, who knows? This all takes a willingness to adapt, flexibility. It can be quite difficult. Services aren't always flexible, and that's something that we should really try to change. In this new world we've got, young people's problems are multitudes, are just every single day it seems as if something new is happening and we have to try and keep up with that. And that's really hard to do. And in order to do this, we need to be able to engage young people. Really, I just believe that we should respect young people and believe in them. And that's all I really have to say. Thank you.